They said they loved me. They said they only wanted what was best for the baby. But I never imagined that love could twist itself into lies, manipulation, and betrayal. While I was recovering from childbirth, they tried to turn my own husband against me. They filled his ears with poison. And worse, they secretly filed paperwork to take my child. I trusted them like family, and they tried to erase me. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. I did not just fight back. I ended their grip on our lives forever. Before we dive deep into this story, subscribe to the channel so you never miss powerful and thought-provoking stories. Let's go in deep. My name is Emily, and I used to believe that marriage meant gaining a second family. That when you said, "I do," it wasn't just to the man you loved, but to the people who raised him. I gave my heart fully to my husband and his family. I bent. I adjusted. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. And when I had our baby boy, I thought they would finally see me as one of their own. Instead, they saw me as an obstacle, something to remove. What they did to me in the months after giving birth nearly broke me. But instead of falling apart, I built a wall. And then I showed them what a mother is truly capable of when her child is threatened. The moment I married Adam, I knew I wasn't just gaining a husband, I was inheriting a family. And in the beginning, I wanted to believe that was a beautiful thing. His parents were charming at first, all hand-knit blankets and warm casseroles. His mother, Karen, would call me sweet girl, while his father, Ron, would toast to family unity during every holiday dinner. I thought I had lucked out, supportive in-laws, tight-knit traditions, and a husband who stood between them and me with a protective kind of grace. But grace, I've learned, can be rehearsed. And love, especially family love, can sometimes be just a more palatable form of control. Things didn't change overnight. It was slow, quiet, and that's what made it dangerous. The first time Karen overstepped, it was on our honeymoon. We had just landed in Maui. I turned on my phone to check in with my sister, and there were 11 missed calls. All from her. When I finally answered, breathless and sunburnt, she said, "Just wanted to make sure you didn't forget your birth control. We really don't want surprises." I was stunned. My hands went cold. Adam just laughed it off. "She means well," he said. But the way she said, I should have known then. 6 months later, I got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but it wasn't a tragedy either. I cried when I saw the test, but not because I was scared. Because something in me already knew that I would love this child with everything I had. When I told Adam, he smiled for a moment, then said, "We should probably wait to tell my parents. They might freak." He wasn't wrong. When we finally told them, Karen blinked twice before plastering on a smile. "Wow, that's fast." Ron said nothing, just nodded. There were no hugs, no tears of joy. Just a tension that settled over the room like fog. Karen started checking in daily after that, asking what I was eating, asking if I had chosen a birth plan, recommending a doctor, her doctor. She dropped off prenatal vitamins with cleaner ingredients, even though my OB had already prescribed mine. Then one day, I came home from a checkup to find her sitting on my couch, holding a file of baby name suggestions. "I let myself in," she said. "Hope that's okay." I told Adam. He shrugged. "She's just excited." But that wasn't excitement. It was preparation. Preparation for something I couldn't yet see. My pregnancy was harder than expected. I developed gestational diabetes. I was constantly nauseous. I couldn't sleep. And through it all, Karen became more present, physically and emotionally, than Adam. When I cried one night from exhaustion, Adam asked, "Maybe you're just hormonal?" I stared at him, hollowed out. And Karen? She brought over food I couldn't eat. Kept asking if I was reading enough about early child development. Once she even said, "You'll need help once the baby comes. I've raised 2, I know what's best." Something in her voice chilled me. When I went into labor, I begged Adam to keep the delivery private. "No one in the room but you and me," I whispered through contractions. He nodded. But 3 hours into active labor, Karen walked in scrubs, holding a hospital visitor badge. I screamed. I just wanted to be here for my grandbaby's first breath, she said, as if I had no say in it. The nurse gently escorted her out. But the damage was done. She had crossed the threshold. She had made it clear, this baby wasn't just mine. When my son, Noah, was born, I cried harder than I ever had. He was small. Perfect. Mine. I held him to my chest and whispered promises I didn't know how I would keep, but knew I would die trying to. Karen was the first visitor. She arrived before my own sister. Brought a knitted hat that she said would be his first outfit photo. She kept taking pictures. At one point, she actually said to Noah, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Grandma's going to take good care of you." Like I wasn't even in the room. I asked Adam to tell her to leave. He hesitated, and that hesitation was the first real crack in our marriage. When we came home from the hospital, Karen had already stocked our fridge, rearranged our pantry, replaced our baby bottles with glass ones she said were better. She had installed a new baby monitor, one that connected to her phone. I lost it. I screamed. I threw the monitor on the floor. Adam told me I was being dramatic. And that night, while I nursed Noah alone in the dark, I knew I was at war. Not just with her, but with my husband's silence. The postpartum fog was thick. I bled for weeks. I cried daily. I had nightmares that someone would take Noah from me. I started locking the nursery door. I started hiding the baby monitor. I stopped eating. My OB said I was showing signs of postpartum depression. Karen overheard. "Poor thing," she said one afternoon, loud enough for me to hear. "She's unraveling. She needs rest." I could take the baby for a few nights. I screamed, and oh, so loudly it scared Noah. She left, but not without planting the seed. 2 weeks later, I found legal documents on the kitchen counter. Custody arrangements, guardianship transfer forms, pre-filled and signed, but ready. And at the top, Karen and Ron's names. I ran to Adam. He was in the garage pretending to fix something. "What the hell is this?" I asked, waving the papers. He didn't even flinch. I thought it might be good to have a backup. In case something happens to you. Something in me broke. I whispered. "Or in case you help something happen to me?" His face paled. He looked away. And I knew. They were trying to take him. I packed a bag that night, took Noah and drove to my sister's house 3 towns over. Filed an emergency order of protection. Got a lawyer. Prepared for war. Because I wasn't going to be erased. I wasn't going to hand over my child to the people who saw me as a vessel, not a mother. This would not be another story where the woman broke and the family walked away with her baby. Not this time. I was going to fight, and they had no idea what that would cost them. The first night I spent at my sister Rachel's place was filled with quiet chaos. Noah wouldn't sleep unless I held him. My body was still sore from childbirth. I had not eaten all day. My head pounded from dehydration and rage. But I was safe. Safe from Karen. Safe from Adam. Safe from the walls that once held my dreams, now echoing with betrayal. Rachel didn't ask questions. She made tea. She cleaned out her guest room. She texted her lawyer husband and said, "It's happening." Because that's what sisters do when the world turns its back on you. They become your spine. The next morning, I sat on Rachel's couch, holding Noah and staring at the printout of the custody documents I had found on Adam's desk. Unfit mother. History of emotional instability. Postpartum depression risk. Grandparents' intervention suggested in child's best interest. My hands shook. My vision blurred. They weren't just trying to remove me. They were building a case. Karen had been preparing this for months. I remembered the pictures she took in the hospital, documenting everything. The times she walked in while I was crying, saying, "We just want to help." The baby monitor. The pantry changes. The food she dropped off while I was still bleeding, making notes about how much I ate or didn't. She had been documenting my unraveling. Or rather, staging it. And Adam? He was letting her. Maybe even helping her. Rachel's husband, David, connected me with a brilliant family attorney named Sarah Cortez. Sharp. Cold. The The kind of woman who wore her confidence like steel armor. She met with me that afternoon. First, she said, "You did the right thing. Leaving was smart. Getting out before they tried to file was smarter." She looked over the documents. "These are aggressive. They've been preparing. This isn't spur of the moment. I know. You're going to need proof. Witnesses. Medical records. A timeline." I nodded. "I already started writing everything down," I said. "From the beginning." Sarah smiled.
"Good.
"Because you're going to court, Emily. And we're not just going to defend. We're going to destroy." In the weeks that followed, I built my case like a woman possessed. Rachel helped me collect photos, texts, call logs. Sarah gathered statements from my OB, my postpartum therapist, even the nurse who had escorted Karen out of my delivery room. We found video footage of Karen trying to enter the hospital room unauthorized. I saved every email, every voicemail from Adam, especially the ones where he tried to sound concerned. "Emily, I think you're overreacting.
Come home.
Let's talk. You're scaring my parents. This isn't healthy. This isn't about us. It's about what's best for the baby." That was the one that cracked my soul. Because how dare he try to make me the villain while aligning with the people trying to steal our son? I filed for full custody, filed for divorce, filed a protective order against his parents. It was like lighting a match in a dry forest. They responded within hours. Adam hired a high-powered attorney, paid for by Ron, no doubt. Karen issued a statement claiming I had abducted the child. They tried to get emergency grandparent visitation rights. The court date was set within 2 weeks. I barely slept. I ate because Rachel made me. I cried in the shower. I held Noah to my chest and whispered, "I will not let them win." Over and over like a prayer, like a spell. The day of the hearing arrived. I wore black slacks, a cream blouse, and a thin gold necklace that used to belong to my mother. Sarah sat beside me, tapping her pen lightly, cool and composed. Across the aisle sat Adam. And Karen. Karen, in pearls and a powder blue blazer, hair perfectly curled, holding a handkerchief she never used. She looked like grief. Manufactured, press-ready grief. I didn't look at her long, because I knew that if I did, the rage would swallow me. The judge was a middle-aged woman with silver hair and tired eyes. She opened with the basics, then called on Adam's attorney. He began with the usual. "Miss Emily Ray is currently undergoing postpartum-related emotional episodes that have affected her judgment. She left the marital home abruptly. She is refusing all communication with the father, Mr. Adam Ray. These behaviors suggest instability. We believe the child should be monitored in a more secure environment with additional family support." Then came Karen's statement. She took the stand and spoke like a mother grieving her own child. "Emily is sweet, but she's overwhelmed. She barely spoke during pregnancy. She cried constantly. She barely ate. We were worried, deeply worried. All we want is what's best for the baby. And if that means temporary custody or supervised visitation, we're prepared." She sniffled. The courtroom was quiet. Then it was my turn. Sarah stood. "Your Honor, we will be presenting documented evidence that the petitioner, Ms. Ray, is not only a capable mother, but a victim of prolonged emotional manipulation and attempted custodial sabotage." She handed over files, photos, screenshots. She called Rachel to the stand. Rachel testified about the phone calls. The night I arrived. The panic. The weight loss. The fear. She read a text Karen sent her by mistake that said, "If we get her labeled unstable now, we can push for custody before the holidays." Gasps echoed. Karen paled. Adam shifted in his seat. But Sarah wasn't done. She called the nurse from the hospital, who testified about Karen entering the room without permission, about the photo taking, about the remarks. Then Sarah played a voicemail Adam left me 3 days after I fled. "I don't want to go through this, but you're leaving me no choice. If you won't give us time with Noah, we'll take it." The judge raised her eyebrows. Sarah said nothing.
She didn't need to.
When I finally took the stand, I spoke softly. I didn't cry. I told them about the day I realized my kitchen had been rearranged. How it started small, critiques, unasked for help. How I began locking the nursery door. How I found legal paperwork that had been pre-filled with my name and the words unfit. I ended with this. I love my son. More than my life. More than anything I have ever known. But love should not look like surveillance. It should not come with conditions. I ran because I was cornered by people who told me I was family, then treated me like a threat. The courtroom was still. Even the judge looked moved. It took 3 days for the decision. I was awarded full custody, pending further review in 6 months. Karen and Ron were denied visitation entirely. Adam was given temporary supervised visitation twice a month under neutral supervision. I walked out of that courtroom not just victorious, but reborn. Because the girl who had once begged to be accepted by her in-laws, she no longer existed. She had been replaced by a woman who knew her worth and protected her child with the ferocity of a lioness. That night, I held Noah on my lap as we sat on Rachel's couch. He giggled as I kissed his tiny hands. I whispered into his soft hair, "They try to take you, but now you'll always know you were worth fighting for." The days following the court decision were both the calm and the storm. There was no more scrambling through legal forms, no last-minute trips to Sarah's office, no preparing witness statements or guarding text messages like they were state secrets. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was eerily still, like the eye of a hurricane. Because though the law had spoken in my favor, I knew Karen would not take the defeat quietly. She had lost control, and women like her do not go down without trying to snatch some part of you on their way out. Adam tried to reach me first. He sent flowers, then a handwritten note, then a voice message. "I miss you. I miss Noah. Can we just talk?" It sounded reasonable, until you remembered that just weeks earlier, this same man was preparing to help his parents take full custody of our son. His messages became increasingly manipulative. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. This isn't good for Noah, being separated like this. You've always been dramatic, Emily. You need to think clearly now." Each one sliced a little deeper. But I didn't respond. Not once. Because I had learned something powerful during those long days preparing for court. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strength under control. And when used right, it says louder than any scream, "You no longer deserve my voice." Karen, unsurprisingly, was less subtle. She began sending letters. Handwritten, formal-sounding letters dripping with faux regret. "I only ever wanted to help you, Emily. Families fight, but we are still yours. I pray you find it in your heart to forgive us for any pain we cause." Every envelope was beige. Every line weaponized in lace. I saved every one and placed them in a folder labeled Evidence, Emotional Manipulation. Sarah advised me to document everything. "She's baiting you," she said flatly. "She wants a reaction. Any reply can be twisted into instability. Stay silent. Stay cold." So I did. Even when Karen sent a letter addressed to Noah, inside was a photo album labeled Grandma's Love. Inside that, pictures of her cradling a newborn Noah at the hospital, her holding his tiny hand, her feeding him a bottle, one I never gave her permission to offer, and a final picture, one I had never seen before. Noah in her lap, eyes closed, with her looking straight at the camera. The caption below read, "Where he belongs." I almost threw up, but instead I took a breath, took a picture of the entire album, and added it to the evidence folder. Because that was not love. That was a message. A threat in lavender perfume. Supervised visits with Adam began a week later. They were held at a child wellness center staffed by social workers and therapists trained in high-conflict family cases. I brought Noah to the first one, not knowing what to expect. Adam sat on the child-sized bench in the playroom, looking thinner than I remembered. His once polished hair was overgrown, and his eyes, once distant, now looked tired. He smiled as I handed Noah over. Noah blinked at him, confused. Adam tried to engage, rolled a ball, made silly faces. Noah stared blankly, then crawled toward a bookshelf. It broke something in Adam. I could see it. He looked at the therapist. He doesn't remember me, does he? The therapist remained neutral. Children remember feelings more than faces. The bond can be rebuilt if the environment is safe. That word, safe, hung heavy in the air. I watched through the observation window. Not with anger. Not with pity. Just sadness. Because this man had once loved me enough to marry me. And now he had to earn back the right to read our son a story. I never said a word to Rachel stood between us like a wall. Back. Off. Karen's face twisted into something truly grotesque for a moment. Then just as quickly, she smiled. I'm just worried about my grandson. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal him, Rachel snapped. I took Noah and walked to the car. Karen called after me, her voice trembling. Emily, one day, you'll regret keeping him from his family. I strapped Noah in without turning around, then said clearly, he already has one. And we drove off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by Noah's crib, watching him breathe, tiny chest rising and falling like waves. I remembered how Adam once said we'd raise him free of drama. How Karen promised she'd never be the interfering type. How Ron toasted at our wedding and said, we'll always have your back. But when things got hard, when I needed support, they chose control over compassion. I had chosen them, and they had chosen themselves. Now I had chosen me, and Noah. In the weeks that followed, things slowly began to heal. Noah giggled more. I cooked meals again. Rachel went back to work, and I managed Noah's schedule like a pro. I started therapy. I started writing. I wrote everything from memories of the early warning signs to the legal strategy we followed. I thought maybe one day another mother might need it. Maybe one day another woman like me, silenced, pushed aside, terrified of losing her child, might read it and find her voice. The working title? The Mother Clause, Surviving the Fight for My Child. One day, as I walked Noah through the park, a woman stopped me. Is that your little one? I nodded. She smiled. He looks like you. Strong eyes. I thanked her, and as she walked away, I looked down at Noah. Strong eyes. Just like his mother. I had stopped waiting for apologies. Stopped hoping for remorse. I didn't need them to be sorry. Because I wasn't rebuilding my life for them to understand it. I was rebuilding it so my son would never have to recover from the things they tried to do to us. It had been 4 months since the custody ruling, and in that time, I had constructed a new rhythm for Noah and me. Life was quieter, yes, but in the silence we began to breathe. We woke up when we wanted. We took long walks to the park. We danced in the kitchen when oatmeal spilled. There were still moments when fear knocked, when I saw a car too similar to Karen's slow roll past the house or got mail without a return address. But mostly I was rebuilding. Until one morning the knock came. Not metaphorical. Real. Hard. Insistent. I opened the door, holding Noah in my arms. There stood Adam. Alone. No flowers. No apology script. Just him. Pale. Visibly thinner. Hair cut short like he was trying to reset himself. I'm not here to fight, he said quickly. I said nothing. I wanted to talk. Please. Noah stirred in my arms. I looked at Adam carefully. There was something different. Not softer, but smaller. Defeated, maybe. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside. Closed the door behind me. You have 5 minutes. He exhaled like he had not breathed in weeks. I know I hurt you. I raised an eyebrow. That's putting it mildly. He nodded. I know. I listened to them. I believed them when they said you were unstable. That you'd leave, or hurt the baby, or just fall apart. His voice cracked. And then you left, and instead of chasing you, I let them talk me into fighting you. I crossed my arms. He looked at me then, full on. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking of protecting yourself, I said coldly. Not us. Never us. He swallowed. I miss him, he said quietly. I miss being a dad. You never stopped being one, I said. You just chose to stop acting like it. He nodded again, then reached into his coat pocket and handed me a folded paper. I've told them I'm done. I've removed their access to anything related to Noah. No phone, no photos, nothing. I told them if they ever interfere again, I'll file charges. I opened the paper. It was a notarized letter. A declaration that Adam would no longer pursue joint custody. He would abide by the court's orders and extend no legal power to his parents regarding Noah's care or decisions. I blinked, then looked at him. Why now? He shrugged. I watched him look at me like I was a stranger. It broke me. I stared at the paper, then back at him. I'm not doing this for you. You will have to earn your son's trust back. I know. And mine? He nodded slowly. One day at a time. I stepped back inside. Noah looked up at me, yawning. I kissed his forehead, then folded the letter and placed it in our drawer marked proof. Because I still did not trust words. But actions? They could be recorded. And redemption, if it ever came, would have to be documented. That same week, I was notified that Karen and Ron had filed a new petition. Not for custody. For grandparent visitation rights. It was a subtle pivot, but a dangerous one. Sarah called me right away. They're smart. They know they can't win custody. But if they argue that the child has an established emotional bond with them, the court may consider supervised visits. I sat in the car outside the daycare, shaking. She has not seen him in 4 months. Yes, Sarah said, but they'll use every photo, every early visit. The photo album. The blanket she made. That kind of sentimentality plays well in court. I cannot go through this again. Yes, you can, she said. Because this time, you already won once. And now you know how they move. We prepared another response. I wrote an affidavit detailing the psychological stress Karen caused during pregnancy and postpartum. Rachel and the nurse provided updated statements. We included the photo caption, "Where he belongs." Sarah said, "That alone paints her intent." I stared at it again. So small. So poisonous. We went to court again. Smaller courtroom. Different judge. More casual. But Karen had come dressed like she was attending a funeral. Ron sat beside her, stoic, unreadable. Adam showed up uninvited, but sat on my side. The judge looked confused. Sarah stood. "Your Honor, we assert that visitation with these individuals is not in the child's best interest. We have documentation of previous attempts to acquire full custody through false claims, as well as evidence of emotional manipulation and boundary violations." Karen's attorney argued, "My clients only wish to see their grandson. Denying them would create a void in the child's familial relationships." Then Karen took the stand. She cried. Real tears this time, or so it seemed. "I just want to hold him again." He smiled when he saw me. "I've lost so much already." She looked like a broken woman. But I had learned Karen's greatest skill was performance. When it was my turn, I said this. Being a grandparent is not a right. It is a privilege. One that is earned through trust, respect, and integrity. These people undermined me at the most vulnerable point in my life. They tried to take my baby from me, not to help, but to replace me. And now they want access again, not for love, but to reassert control. My child does not need that. He needs safety. He needs stability. He needs truth. There were no tears. Only conviction. The judge took 3 days. Then denied their petition. No visitation. No appeal for 12 months. The court ruled that Noah's psychological well-being outweighed any familial connection claims. Karen was not in the courtroom when the decision was read. She had left halfway through the final hearing. But Ron was. He looked at me once, not with anger, but something resembling regret, then walked away. For good. That evening, as I fed Noah mashed carrots, he clapped his hands and giggled. I laughed too. Because the shadow that had loomed over our kitchen, our days, our very sense of home, it was finally gone. No more knocks. No more court summons. No more fear. Just a mother. And her son. and a peace they had built through fire. That night, I added one more page to my book draft, a chapter titled, "When the Law Stands Beside You." I wrote, "You can win. You can stand up to the family that tries to own you. The silence you once felt can become the loudest declaration of your truth. And your child will one day know that you were not a victim, but a warrior who stood alone and still won." 1 year. 365 days since I first held that custody paper in trembling hands. Noah was walking now, more like wobbling really, but his laugh was fuller, his eyes brighter. He said "Mama" and "Baba," and had a special giggle reserved only for when he spilled his sippy cup on purpose. He had no memory of Karen, or of the house we once called home, but I did, and that made the milestones feel even more sacred. Every first was now ours alone. His first birthday party was small, just me, Rachel, David, and a few of their close friends. We decorated the living room with pastel blue streamers and little paper boats. I made carrot cake cupcakes with cream cheese frosting. Rachel said they were better than any bakery in town. "No wonder Karen was jealous," she joked. I laughed, but deep down, I felt it again, how much they had tried to erase me. But the laughter in Noah's eyes reminded me they had failed. Spectacularly. In that year, I also rediscovered myself. The woman I was before motherhood, before marriage, before betrayal. I returned to work part-time, remote, with flexible hours. My employer, a publishing house, had held my role. But more than that, they'd read my blog, the one I had started under the pen name Wounded Lioness. Raw entries about postpartum gaslighting, emotional abuse from in-laws, and what it meant to reclaim your motherhood. It had grown slowly, first 10 readers, then 100, then 10,000. Women messaged me, cried with me, sent me photos of themselves holding their babies with a caption, "I left too." One message stood out. "I thought I was going crazy, but reading your blog made me realize I wasn't unstable, I was being manipulated. Thank you for being the voice I didn't know I needed." I cried for an hour after reading it, and that night I decided to turn my blog into a book. Sarah, my attorney, connected me with a literary agent. The title changed slightly, from The Mother Clause to Unfit, A Mother's War Against the Lie. And within weeks, we had offers from 3 publishers. It was surreal to see my pain, my once private war, become a source of strength for others. Adam's visits had become steady, twice a month, always supervised, but more respectful now. He came on time. He brought small toys. He no longer begged for conversation. He knew the boundaries, and that I respected. One afternoon, as we were leaving the visitation center, he stopped at the door. "Emily," he said gently, "thank you for letting me try again." I nodded. "I'm not doing it for you," I replied. "I'm doing it for him. He deserves to know his father is capable of change." Adam swallowed, eyes glistening. "I was wrong. About everything." "I know," I said. "And if you ever forget it again, we'll be right back in court. And next time, I won't hold back." He nodded like a man who understood what it meant to be given the final warning. He never crossed the line again. But Karen? She tried once more, a year to the day after the last court ruling. She sent Noah a birthday gift. No return address. Inside the brown box, a stuffed lamb, and a card. "No matter what anyone says, Grandma will always love you." I stood at the counter, holding that card like it was a live wire. Rachel took it from me, wordlessly placed it in a Ziploc bag, and handed it to me. For the file. I placed it in the same drawer as the others. But this time I didn't feel fear. I felt nothing. And that, too, was victory. I started therapy again. Not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to build better. To become the kind of woman who didn't just survive betrayal, but used it to fortify her sense of worth. My therapist, Dr. Lena Cortez, Sarah's sister, coincidentally, asked me one day, "Do you forgive them?" I paused. "I don't know if I ever will." "That's fair," she said. "Forgiveness is not a door we must walk through. Sometimes, It's enough to simply close the chapter and move on. I liked that, because I had grown tired of narratives that demanded we forgive people just because we share blood or history. Sometimes healing means cutting ties.
Clean.
Final.
Permanent.
A year later, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because I was unrecognizable, but because I had become who I was always meant to be. Claire, yes, that was me again. Not just Noah's mom, not just Adam's wife, but Claire, a woman with fire in her chest and clarity in her heart. The book launched on a sunny Saturday. I wore a white blouse and black jeans. Noah sat on my hip as I gave a reading at a local bookstore. The room was packed. Women held copies of my book, some with tears already in their eyes. I read the chapter titled, When the Family You Married Turns into a Courtroom. And when I finished, the room clapped. Loudly. Noah clapped too. Then pulled the mic toward him and shouted, "Mama." The crowd laughed. I kissed his cheek. That night, the bookstore sold out of every copy. And my publisher emailed to say the first run was already in reprint. I stared at the screen in disbelief. From almost losing my child, to becoming a voice for thousands of mothers, from being labeled unfit, to writing the book that destroyed that word for so many. 1 year later, I had not only survived, I had reclaimed everything. My child, my name, my power. Spring had just begun when the email arrived. Subject line, TV rights inquiry. Unfit. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it, my heart unsure whether to hope or brace. It was from a producer at a small but rising documentary studio known for adapting memoirs into emotional short series. She wrote, "Your story resonated with our team in a way very few ever do. We believe there are thousands of women who need to hear your journey. Would you be open to discussing a docuseries adaptation of Unfit?" I blinked. Reread it. Then read it again.
Me?
Claire, whose in-laws once tried to steal her baby. Claire, who once cried alone in a parked car wondering if she was going to lose everything. I forwarded the email to Rachel with the subject line, "Is this real life?" Her reply was instant.
Yes.
"This is the life you fought for. Now answer them before I drive over and do it myself." We scheduled a Zoom call that same week. The producer's name was Dana. Mid-40s, confident, with silver streaks in her dark hair and glasses, she kept pushing up her nose as she spoke. "I want to tell your story as it happened. Not a sensationalized version. Not the evil mother-in-law trope. The real one, the emotional weight, the gaslighting, the quiet victories. Mothers need to know they are not alone in these battles." For the first time, I didn't feel like a character in someone else's narrative. I felt seen. Really seen. We signed a development deal within the month. She even asked me to narrate parts of it. My voice. My truth. My healing on screen. The announcement went semi-viral. A few parenting blogs picked it up. Then a feminist podcast featured me in an episode titled, "Motherhood Doesn't Come with a Manual, but Sometimes It Comes with Court Papers." Emails flooded in. One from a woman in Missouri who said, "I'm currently in the middle of a custody war with my ex's parents. Your blog kept me alive. Your book made me strong. And now your show. I finally feel like I'm not crazy." And another, "My daughter-in-law shared your story with me. It changed how I speak to her. Thank you for showing both sides." I cried reading that one, because maybe, just maybe, this pain wasn't wasted. And then came the message I never expected. From Adam. He had seen the show teaser online. "I watched the trailer. You're incredible. Noah's lucky to have you." I stared at the message, stunned. No bitterness. No guilt trip. Just grace. That, too, was growth. I replied with one word. "Thank you." And it felt right. Noah had just turned 2. He was running now, barefoot on the soft grass, laughing wildly at the wind like it told jokes only he could hear. I watched him from the porch, sipping tea, wearing a simple linen robe and feeling, at last, safe. Rachel joined me, her laptop in hand. She was reading early reviews. You've got a 4.9 on Goodreads, she said, grinning. And your Amazon page just passed 10,000 sales. You're officially a bestseller, Claire. The name sounded right again. For so long, it was a name I buried beneath labels. Mother, wife, survivor. Now it was a name I stood in fully. That night, I sat down to write the final chapter of the second edition of Unfit. Not to change anything,
But to add something.
a letter. To Noah. My dear Noah, by the time you read this, I hope you'll know that love isn't always loud and family isn't always kind. But I hope, more than anything, that you'll remember the mother who fought for you. Not because I was perfect, not because I never cried or doubted, but because I chose you. Every single day. Even when it was hard. Even when it was terrifying. Even when I stood alone. Especially then. And if you ever face something that tries to take your light, know that you were born of fire. And I will always be your first home.
Love. Mama.
A week before the docu-series premiered, I visited the bookstore again. This time not as a guest, but as a mentor. The owner invited me to speak at a women's writing circle. I shared my journey, my fall, my rise. A young woman asked me, "What's the one thing you'd go back and tell yourself during the darkest part?" I smiled and said, "You're not crazy. You're just surrounded by people who benefit from making you think you are." The room went still. Then applause erupted, because every woman there knew exactly what that meant. The show premiered on a Friday evening. I sat with Noah curled beside me, asleep. Rachel and David on the couch, popcorn between them. When the credits rolled, my name glowed on screen. Claire Michaels, writer, mother, warrior. I didn't cry. I smiled, because I had lived every line of that title. And now, the world would hear it too. A month after the documentary aired, the emails slowed down. The messages of support still came, but now in quieter, more intimate waves. Women who had seen their own faces in mine. Fathers who said they wished they had known sooner. Grandmothers who apologized to their own daughters-in-law. And then, just as I was preparing to settle into a gentler season of life, an envelope arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single-page letter. From Karen. I sat in the kitchen, the morning sun streaming in through the blinds, the scent of Noah's banana pancakes still warm in the air, and read it aloud, once, to myself. Claire, I saw the show. All of it. You were honest. More than I expected you to be. And I was angry at first, but not because you lied. Because you didn't. I watched myself through your eyes, and I hated what I saw. The woman I became around you. The woman I let pain turn me into. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a reply. But I want you to know that I did love Noah. I still do. I just thought loving him meant controlling everything. I was wrong. You protected him better than I ever could have. And that's what a mother does. I'm leaving the state. You won't hear from me again. But I needed you to know you won. And I'm glad you did. Karen.
I stared at it for a long time.
Not because I believed every word, but because I knew how hard it must have been to write. It wasn't an apology. Not quite. But it was a surrender. And, in its own strange way, a beginning of closure. I did not write back. Some silences are more healing than any words. I folded the letter and tucked it into the back of my book draft. Not in the evidence drawer, but in a section marked ending notes. Because that's what this was. An ending. Noah was growing fast. Too fast. He had just started preschool. His first day was a chaos of tears, mine, and laughter, his. He wore a dinosaur backpack and gave his teacher a flower from our garden. I stood at the window for 20 minutes after drop-off, not ready to drive away. It struck me how far we had come from the woman who once feared she'd lose him. I had not just kept my child. I had kept his joy. Rachel threw a small dinner party the night I signed the deal for my second book. Not a memoir, I told them. A guidebook. For new moms. But honest. No sugarcoating. We raised glasses to the title. The strongest voice in the room. A mother's guide to saying no. Everyone laughed. Everyone toasted. Even Adam, who sent a congratulatory text that simply said, "You did it." For all of us. I didn't reply, but I smiled. Because healing is not always reconciliation. Sometimes it's the ability to wish someone well from far, far away. Months passed, then seasons. The house got cozier. I repainted Noah's room with little constellations and glowing stars. He said he wanted to be an astronaut. I said, "Only if you still call me from space." He nodded. Every day. And I believed him. The documentary won a local award. Dana called crying. "You don't understand," she said. "Networks are bidding. Claire, this is going bigger." I looked at Noah chasing the cat in the backyard. "It already is," I said.
She paused.
"You're right." One night, while tucking Noah in, he asked, "Mama, are you famous?" I laughed. "No, baby. Just loud." He grinned.
Good.
"I like it when you're loud. It makes me feel safe." Tears welled up in my eyes. Because somewhere, in that tiny child's words, was the echo of everything we had survived. I kept the letter from Karen, but I never showed it to Noah. Maybe one day. When he's older. When he asks. But until then, I want him to live in a world where the only thing he remembers is the strength of my arms, the softness of my voice, and the safety of my presence. I want his childhood to be unmarked by their cruelty. Because that, to me, is the greatest revenge of all. I closed the second book with a final chapter titled, "Cutting the Cord, Why Letting Go is the Bravest Thing You'll Ever Do." In it I wrote, "Some ties bind, others choke. Some are stitched with love, others with control. It's okay to walk away from the ones that tried to break you, especially when they wear the mask of family. You're not heartless. You're not cruel. You're free. And your child will thank you one day, not for protecting them from monsters, but for never becoming one yourself." The book launched on Mother's Day, and I stood in a room full of women, warriors in their own quiet battles, and said, "My name is Claire, and I am not the woman they said I was. I am the woman I chose to become after they showed me who they really were." The crowd rose, clapping, crying, because that truth, it belonged to so many of us. I walked out that night, holding Noah's hand. He looked up at me, sleepy. "Mama, did you win?" I bent down, kissed his forehead. "No, baby. I didn't win. I became." And that was more powerful than any victory.